as a third-generation Canadian. The exclusionary period was very much part of my family history. On my father's side, my grandparents came to Calgary in Canada in the early 1900s, and they started a small retail business and started a family. My father was born in 1918, and 5 years later, as a 5-year-old, the Exclusion Act was implemented, and my grandparents had to register him as a Chinese person living in Canada. My mother was born in 1923, the same year as the introduction of the Exclusion Act. And about 3 or 4 years later, my mother left with my grandmother and other siblings to go back to China. For my grandmother was going back, but for my mother was going to China as an immigrant from Canada. When they left, they had no idea when they were going to come back. And so eventually, almost 2 decades later, with the repeal of the Exclusion Act, they came in 1949. Roughly 1950, my mother and father met, and so here I am talking to you 7 decades later. That's the personal meaning that this Exclusion Act has for me.
For the Chinese community, it is an opportunity for us to learn, to reflect about the experience of our ancestors, and to understand the impact of the Act on the social integration and development of the community. Today, it's about the government of Canada acknowledging this challenging, darker side of our Canadian history, acknowledging not only the Act happened, but also the social consequences of the Act. We have people from across the country gathering in the Senate chamber to remember and recognize those who have contributed to the building of Canada, yet never recognized. And now we have an act of commemoration, and through artistic expressions today, that we get to tell their stories.
So I don't want Canadians to forget about this time period, and I want newer Canadians and those who don't know about it to be educated about it. So that, to me, is the most important thing.